everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the CrossFit Games Update Show. I'm Sean Woodland with Tommy Marquez and Pat Sherwood, turning our attention to the team competition. And every year in the team competition, teams get more well-rounded, more fit. And I think this year is the same story. And we're probably set for what is going to be one of the best matchups that we've seen at the games.
Well, every year we need to up the ante, right? They show us what they can do. The test becomes increasingly difficult. And as each year of competition ticks by, you have more and more individual athletes saying, you know what, yeah, I'm going to give this team thing a shot.
Absolutely, and the demand on the athletes goes up. Last year we added a Wednesday portion of the competition, including an offside event and a swim, so I can only imagine what we're going to add this year to kind of up the ante for them as well.
The team competition, as far as history is concerned, history has given us a good indication as to who the favorites are going into the CrossFit Games. Every year since we've had regionals, the Affiliate Cup winner has won their respective regional. Here are the 8 teams that won their regionals. CrossFit East Tamaki in the Pacific, Diablo CrossFit, a Games veteran team. They won the California Regional. In the Central, the defending champs, CrossFit Mayhem, and then in the Meridian, CrossFit Nordic with a strong showing there over in Madrid. What we've done is taken those 8 teams out of the cross-regional leaderboard. Here's what we have left. CrossFit Parallax are the top-ranked team. They're in 3rd. CrossFit Ocean 3, they're in 7th. They're going to the games for the first time. CrossFit Invictus, they're a former Affiliate Cup champion. And then CrossFit Yats, a team that got a lot of attention heading into the regionals, is they're in 5th at the Meridian Regional. There are some veteran teams, then there are some veteran teams in the CrossFit Games this year. Teams that have made 8 appearances at the CrossFit Games. Both of them have won Affiliate Cups, CrossFit Invictus, and then CrossFit Vancouver. They won in 2010. Those teams did not win their regionals, but they have a ton of experience, and that is extremely valuable when you get to Carson.
Valuable, and one of the teams, okay, Invictus didn't win their regional, but they're in a different league than most other teams, again, making it to the games for the 8th time, and they have won the whole thing before. They're sharing that company this year with CrossFit Mayhem and Fort Vancouver as well. Other teams have qualified that have also won the games. This morning I talked to Maddie Myers. Last year she competed at the games as an individual. This year she was on Invictus's team. They didn't win regionals, but she actually said that's kind of a blessing in disguise. They went in with a ton of pressure, a lot of expectations. They made a lot of small mistakes that kept them from the #1 spot, but not winning their regional has actually resharpened, refocused what they have going on. They're training harder than ever. And don't forget, Nuno Costa, who's been to the games every time since there's been an affiliate competition, he's an alternate, and they could in that last week during games check-in decide to make him one of the 6.
And the other team that you mentioned that has won the games, CrossFit Fort Vancouver, I think is almost an identical story with them. This is a team that's done just about everything there is to do in the Affiliate Cup competition. You look at from the big picture in terms of placing, they've won the games, they've won their regionals, they've finished on the podium multiple times, they've had 3 top 5 finishes at the games. Then you look at individual events, and this is where it starts to look impressive for them as well. They're tied for 3rd all-time when it comes to total event wins in CrossFit Games history. And the teams that they're up there with, CrossFit 808, Mayhem Freedom, CrossFit, all legends of the sport in terms of the affiliate competition. And they have a guy, Adam Neifert, who's their captain, who's the equivalent of Nuno Costa for Invictus. He's been on every single team, and he's going to compete for the 8th time at the CrossFit Games. Then you add a guy like Adam Dunlap, who was 8th at the West in the individual competition at regionals this year. He didn't make it to the games, so he's hopping on Fort Vancouver's team. They're only going to be stronger, and you have to keep your eye on them.
And you mentioned Nuno Costa being added to the Invictus roster. A lot of teams out there right now that are adjusting their rosters as they get set to head to Carson, California. CrossFit Nordic added Michaela Norman. She finished 12th at the Meridian Regional, right now listed as an alternate though. Marysville adding a pair of athletes. Athletic adding Sammy Wood, who finished 9th at the Pacific Regional. And then Milford adding Trevor James, who finished 12th in the East. And of course, CrossFit Mayhem Freedom earlier in the year added Lindy Barber. More on that tomorrow. But of the teams that we just showed you, who do you think helped themselves the most?
I think one of the ones that you just mentioned, that's CrossFit Athletic, adding Sammy Wood, anyone who was an individual games competitor just last year, where she took 12th. She did excellent at the games. The affiliate is making it back to the games for the 4th trip, and they also have Amy Alessi, who's a regional level individual competitor as well, so they set themselves up very nicely.
I have to agree with you, Pat. You look back to 2014, the last time Sammy Wood was actually on this team competing at the games, they were 11th, just 2 points shy of a top 10 spot, and really heading into the final day, they were one of the contenders for the podium. Granted, they had a nightmarish Final Four events. They only took 245 points out of a possible 500 points. But it's hard to argue that Sammy Wood isn't a much better version of herself, having finished 12th at the games as an individual. So you look at Athletic as a team that is getting a massive boost from individual athletes.
A couple teams that are making their first trips to the CrossFit Games are in the top 10 of that cross-regional comparison leaderboard. That's OC3 Black and Parallax, and both of them can certainly make some noise at the CrossFit Games.
I think OC3 Black has a legitimate shot. So they were third place out at the Central Regional. Of course, Mayhem ran away with it, but the race between second and third place only came down to 4 little points, so they were right up there. 5 of their 6 members competed last year at regionals on Team Rollins. You know, their worst finish was 9th at regional this year, 3 top 3 finishes, so they're the real deal.
I'm looking at CrossFit Parallax, and I think not winning their region is actually a good thing for them. They were second in the East behind CrossFit Dynamics, a team that had all the hype in the world coming into it. And Parallax was a team that really kind of held court the best over the course of the weekend in a region that had the most parity. Every single team that qualified for the games sat in first place at one point in time in the competition, and Parallax was the only team to sit in first after 3 different events. So even though they didn't win, they had a couple, maybe a rough event on the final day that knocked them from first place. They're a team that can hang even when the parity is an all-time high, which is going to be at the game. So I'm excited for it.
And you just mentioned that parity. I mean, this is certainly the deepest field that we've had in the team competition, and you can go outside the top 10 on that cross-regional leaderboard, and you can find some teams that definitely have a shot to contend for a podium spot.
And CrossFit Yas has to be in that conversation. We talked a lot about them leading up to regionals. They took second place out at the Meridian Regional, just behind Nordic OPEX, but they were highly anticipated, had a lot of pressure, and rightfully so. They have Jamie Green on their team, who won the Open, beating Sam Briggs, Annie Thorsdottir, you name it. She was the #1 ranked female, and then their team was the #1 ranked team, so how could all eyes not be on them? But that pressure, it's a lot to deal with. So hey, they went to regionals, they did great, they shook it off. Now they need to go to the games and perform.
Well, I'm looking at 12 Labor's Lions this year. They were 6th at the games last year, and even though they finished 3rd at the regional, I think they're going to show up big in Carson. They're one of only 2 teams the last 2 years that have finished inside the top 10 at the games for both years. And remember, back in 2014, this team essentially flew under a different banner in CrossFit Syndicate, and they're kind of following a blueprint that I think CrossFit 808 has kind of set over the years, where a strong trio of women can really carry you almost to the top 10 or even the podium sometimes. They have an athlete in Teresa Luce, who's 7th in the Mid-Atlantic in the Open. Then Maddie Mansberger, who's 11th in the Open in the Mid-Atlantic. And then you round that out with the individual games athlete from 2012 and Kristen Wagner. And I think they're just going to parallel last year, where they were 3rd at regionals, and then they showed up big in Carson, and they're 3rd at regionals again. And I think they're going to show up big again.
Yeah, a ton of talented teams at the team competition at the 2016 Reebok CrossFit Games. Tickets are still available. The tennis stadium tickets are sold out, but soccer stadium tickets are still available, and you'll be able to watch all the events that are going on at the StubHub Center if you purchase one of those. We'll be back tomorrow to take a look at the top 8 teams heading to the team competition at the CrossFit Games. For Pat and Tommy, I'm Sean. We'll see you guys tomorrow.